You can see and look at this 3-game stretch for this Pittsburgh Steelers have just had. You can see and look at it two completely different ways. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 29-10. And let's just talk about the game for a second. I've said this before, and I will continue to say it. When you play a team as good, as potent as the Kansas City Chiefs, one thing that is underrated and one thing that isn't talked about a lot when you play these teams is the margin of error is so slim. One mistake when you play a team as good as Kansas City, one mistake can start an avalanche that can essentially lose you a game. Because one thing that we know about momentum, once a team has momentum, it's almost over with. And we saw in this game, one or two mistakes essentially cost the Pittsburgh Steelers this game. There was a point, it was 13-10, right? And the Pittsburgh Steelers that were struggling off defensively looked like they were about to catch some steam. And then, boom, Pat Freiermuth fumbles the ball, and 13-10 turned into 29-10 very quickly. Hell, Travis Kelce broke Tony Gonzalez's touchdown record for Kansas City. Momentum is a crazy thing, and people that know you can't. It's almost impossible to play a good game while playing against momentum. So Kansas City, this is probably the worst case scenario for anybody that is hoping that the Kansas City Chiefs don't repeat or three-peat. Don't make NFL history and be the first team to three-peat. This is probably the worst case scenario that you could possibly have. And honestly, we could see it coming. The Kansas City Chiefs are starting to round into form. Travis Kelce's playing better. You got Hollywood Brown back. Xavier Worthy, he's getting more acclimated with the NFL, seeing as though he's a rookie. DeAndre Hopkins is still good. This Kansas City Chiefs team is rounding up the form. They just beat the Pittsburgh Steelers without their best defensive player in Chris Jones. They're playing their best football at the right time. Now, obviously, this is not the playoffs, but you don't want to roll into the playoffs looking bad. You don't want to go into the playoffs with your team not playing their best. There's a difference between losing the last game maybe because you sit everybody or just not playing well going into the playoffs. That's kind of the Texans. The Texans are not playing well, and they're about to go into the playoffs. That's just not a good look. That's why I'm lower on the Texans than a lot of people. This Kansas City Chiefs team, it seems like they're rounding into form. Yes, they're one of the only teams that hasn't scored 30 points this year. But they're also playing their best football. Patrick Mahomes had 320 yards. Yeah. This is a scary look. But I said that this game kind of told me more about the Steelers than it did the Kansas City Chiefs. And you can look at this game a couple different ways, depending on which angle you want to take when we talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, Pittsburgh is on a 3-game losing streak. Now, in those 3 games, they have played the Kansas City Chiefs, number 1 in the AFC. They've played the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, who now leads the division, and they played the Philadelphia Eagles, who has Super Bowl aspirations and I think is the number 2 team in the NFC right now. So, yes, they're on a 3-game losing streak, but you're going against the top tier talent while not having someone like George Pickens. But that is where I want to focus. That's kind of what I took out of this. And that's why I am not as high on the Pittsburgh Steelers as many other people. Now, I understand the importance of a number 1 wide receiver. I will never sit here and say that, oh, because they depend on George Pickens so much, that's why. No. Lamar Jackson is heavily dependent on Zay Flowers. He's a number 1 receiver. Patrick Mahomes is highly dependent on Travis Kelce. My issue is just how drastic the drop-off is from when George Pickens is on the field and when he's not on the field when we talk about the overall offense. It feels like the offense just falls off a cliff when George Pickens doesn't play compared to when he does play. I understand things change. Like if Jamar Chase wasn't on the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Burrow obviously wouldn't have the amount of numbers that he has, and things would be different. I get that. But I'm also looking at it as, I don't know if the offense would drop as precipitously as it does with George Pickens not being on the field with Pittsburgh. A lot of people like to put blame at Russell Wilson's feet. A lot of people are saying that Russell Wilson is the reason why this team is now lost 3 straight, and now they're talking about contract extensions and what they should do next year, and should they go back to Justin Fields. While yes, I do agree that you would like your quarterback to play better and not lose the game, and some of the interceptions that Russell Wilson has thrown in this 3-game stretch hasn't been the greatest. But I honestly think that Russell Wilson is the last issue with this Pittsburgh. In fact, I think that, to be completely honest, in these last 4 games, he's been the actual only positive with the Steelers outside of the coaching. Which brings me to the reason why I'm not going to say out on Pittsburgh, but I view them not as good as or not as potent as I thought they would be based on how they played beginning of the year. Again, you played the Kansas City Chiefs, you played the Baltimore Ravens, and you played the Philadelphia Eagles. We knew that this was going to be the defining stretch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think next week you go against the Cincinnati Bengals, I believe. But my issue is with their defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers calling card has always been playing stout defense. Hell, I came on here and I've been raving about how good TJ Watt has been, and I thought that at least early in the season, TJ Watt should be the MVP or Defensive Player of the Year. And while I still think TJ Watt is great, Highsmith is great, they have not, and I'm not just putting them, the defense as a whole hasn't been great. The defense has been actually the main reason. We talk about balance. And early in the season, especially with Russell Wilson, I said that the team is now more balanced than it's been for a while. If the defense was playing bad, the offense could pick them up. If the offense wasn't playing too well, you had a stout defense. Well, over these last few games, obviously you're playing top tier talent, but that has exposed that their defense has not been great. Now, yes, when you play against Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce, it's going to be tough, especially with Joey Porter not playing against the Chiefs. But your defense, now you have people like Cam Hayward calling out players. You have people like Patrick Queen calling out players. That's not a good sign. It shouldn't feel like you collapse after it shouldn't feel like you collapse after playing a good game. And that's kind of what it feels like is happening with this defense. I think Russell Wilson, the interceptions don't look good, even though a couple of the interceptions wasn't really his fault. Like George Pickens just stopped running the route, which would have freed up someone like Pat Freiermuth in the Kansas City Chiefs game. That really wasn't his fault. Or the fumbles, like Najee Harris has had a bad fumbling problem this year. The thing is, and the last thing I'll say about this before we move on, you'd hope that the margin of error is a lot wider for a Super Bowl caliber team. Like, I think the margin of error for the Baltimore Ravens is kind of wide because of just how talented they are. The margin of error, in my opinion, for the Kansas City Chiefs has shrunk this year, but it's still very wide because of how good their defense plays, and they have the number one defense in football. There's such a razor thin margin of error for the Pittsburgh Steelers that if one thing goes awry, it feels like the team can't catch up. At least that's what it felt like these last 3 weeks. And I just said the one thing that you want to do is you want to feel good. You want to play your best football going into the season. It's kind of like riding the momentum, riding the wave. Well, if the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to make a playoff run, they would have to define the odds because they, in fact, are not playing their best football right now. In fact, you can argue that they're playing their worst this year. And that's the last thing you want to do going into the playoffs. Again, 3 weeks ago, they were the number one seed in the NFC North. Now they are not. Now they're probably going to have to either go to a place like Houston or not. The AFC North is it's crazy. But you definitely want to play your best football, and they're not playing that. Compared to when we look at someone like the Kansas City Chiefs, compared to someone like the Baltimore Ravens that we saw on Christmas, they are playing their best football at the right time. Which is why it just feels different when we watch them compared to watch someone like the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, we'll see. Shouts out to Kansas City for beating Pittsburgh 29-10. Shouts out for Baltimore, or shouts out to Baltimore for beating the Texans 31-2. And shouts out Beyonce Incredible performance. Incredible performance. As a person that isn't a quote unquote Beyonce stan, I thought it was great. It was a great performance, man. I know, I can imagine how many people were upset. So the NFL was promoting that we were going to get Beyonce as well as Mariah Carey. They said Mariah Carey was going to, I guess, sing a Christmas song, seeing as though it was on Christmas, was going to sing a Christmas song at the beginning of the first game, which was the Steelers in Kansas City. And when I saw the video, they never said, now obviously it didn't specify if it was going to be live or not, but when I saw the video of Mariah Carey, I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's not going to be live. That makes sense. They have a bunch of CGI and a bunch of stuff. It makes sense. When Beyonce started, I can just imagine America's face, especially a lot of the women that was only watching this game because of Beyonce, or was only watching halftime because of Beyonce. I can imagine how frustrated they were when it started in video. And it was like a long video. I'm like, oh, this whole performance is about to be on video. Yo, they're about to riot at the Netflix headquarters. But then it turned into live, and it was great. So shouts out to Beyonce. Shouts out to the camp. Shouts out to that. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.